Tommy Shepherd.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This schedule that the Leader has presented today takes us to a point which is precisely 3 months since the date of the general election. And I have to say that I still find the pace of the agenda he puts before us rather sedate. And I am left wondering when this government is going to get into gear, or whether or not its proposals for radical reform are not nearly as expansive as its Public Relations Department would have us believe. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is the week in which both the Scottish and the United Kingdom governments are hosting major events on the drugs crisis which afflicts every part of this union. And there is a growing awareness in this chamber that the law needs to change in order to allow more effective interventions to save lives. So can I ask the Leader of the House, will the government bring forward a debate on the drugs crisis in the United Kingdom in order to look at changes in both secondary and primary legislation? Secondly, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to talk about the evil procedures and the estimates. The Leader may remember that when evil was introduced, and this party made the argument that many of the matters which are reserved to England and Wales have consequences through the Barnett formula for the funding of services in Scotland. We were told at that time that since Barnett was essentially about money rather than policy, the proper place to debate this would be when the House comes to consider the estimates. Now, we have a bizarre situation coming up next week, where this House is being asked to approve hundreds of billions of pounds of public expenditure without any debate at all. I know that that is because the Liaison Committee has not met, but that is hardly our responsibility. And therefore I want to ask the Leader, will the Government make arrangements to allow this House to debate the estimates and for us to move amendments about the consequences that they would have for public services in Scotland? And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to gently say to the Leader of the House that the fact that he will not answer my question does not make it go away. So I ask him again, when is the Government going to bring forward proposals to deal with the fact that it does not have a mandate north of the Scottish border? And I say this in a week when another opinion poll has been published, this time asking people whether they wish to have a referendum on the question. And 55% of the Scottish public now want a referendum within the lifetime of this Parliament. So when will the Government stop ignoring that and deal with it?
Madam Deputy Speaker, dealing with the last point first, the honourable gentleman makes a very typical confusion. That is to say, when an answer is given that is not the answer that is wanted, that does not mean that the question has not been answered. These are two separate concepts, so I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I have given previously from the dispatch box. As regards the speed with which this government has got off the starting blocks, we are the Lamborghini of governments, the Ferrari of governments. I have never known 0 to 60 being achieved at a faster pace. Bear in mind, within a few weeks of the general election, we're the Aston Martin of governments, if you prefer. I'm quite tempted to say the Bentley of governments, but my 1936 Bentley takes so long to get to 60 miles an hour that it wouldn't necessarily be the right comparison. After all, we have legislated to leave the European Union, which is perhaps the most fundamental piece of legislation that we could have passed. I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman for raising the important issue of the drugs conference that is going on in Scotland today, and we are concerned at the rate of drug death in Scotland, which are 3 times higher than the UK average. So it is quite right that the conference is taking place in Scotland, and there needs to be a balanced policy involving enforcement, and some dozens of people were arrested yesterday alone in a number of raids in the county lines problem, and that it needs to be a mix of enforcement and of treatment, and I think working out precisely where policy should go is the right thing, and I'm sure that once that's done there will be statements and debates in this place. As regards estimates and evil, I have sympathy for what the honourable gentleman is saying. There are deadlines in terms of when the estimates have to be approved by, but the government is conscious that it owes the Liaison Committee and the Backbench Committee time to consider these issues, and that will be an opportunity for the honourable gentleman and his party to debate the matters that they wish to bring forward.